Howdy folks. So probably a pretty short video today. So I'm going to be changing the motherboard and CPU in my router, which is this box down here, with this little mini ITX board. This is an MSI H81i. It's got a Pentium, what is it? It's a G3258. Yeah, it's a Pentium G3258. And it's got 4 gigs of DDR3, 1333 megahertz memory in it. And this was pulled from another system. And of course, this video is kind of boring on its own, right? I'm just changing a motherboard. But the real reason I wanted to make this video was I wanted to point out something for everyone who's using pfSense or plans to use it in the future. Just a couple days ago, Netgate, which is of course the company which pays developers to develop pfSense, they put out a public statement about pfSense 2.5 and hardware support. And of course, we're currently at 2.3. 2.4 is in beta, and 2.5 is probably a year or two out. But as some people will know, 2.4 is the first version which requires a 64-bit processor, and we kind of knew that was coming. But 2.5 will also require that you have a processor which supports AES-NI instructions. And so if you build a box, or if you have a box that does not support AES-NI, then you will not be able to install or upgrade to pfSense 2.5, regardless of whether you use hardware crypto at all or not. So this CPU does not support it, and therefore this system I'm putting in here knowing it's only going to get a year or two's worth of life. I only bought this last year. So, it's kind of unfortunate. And I mean, buying a new CPU for this has cost more than the whole thing does, so I'll probably end up moving this to something else and just get a whole new board for this, or I'll just buy an embedded box and do away with this whole thing. I'm not quite sure what I'll do yet. But yeah, it's something that if you're going to be building something in the near future, you should probably know about that. And I'll link down to Netgate's sort of blog post press release thing, where they don't really give you any more details. They basically say, yeah, we have plans and whatever. So I'm not quite sure why they're doing it. I mean, I don't think the development effort of maintaining the software crypto was really that hard. So they must have some corporate thing that they're trying to do. But anyway, so let me just move this. I'm going to probably upgrade pfSense. This thing's been up for 100 and something days, so it's a version behind. So I'll upgrade this to make sure that an upgrade works properly on the existing hardware before I swap this, just in case something goes wrong. And so there's a graphics card in there now with the network card, and of course this only has one PCI Express slot, but I only need one because this has onboard graphics. I literally have an AMD 5450 or something in there. Just there's nothing plugged into it. I have to put that in there just because the motherboard requires a graphics card in order to post, which is kind of dumb. So this case is one of these really shitty Apevia or whatever cases, and it doesn't officially support ITX, but technically the ITX mounting holes are actually the same as the ATX mounting holes, and the CPU location is also the same, so technically any ATX case will support a mini ITX board. However, I think one of the holes is actually optional in ATX, so you may have to drill in. I may have to drill and tap a standoff. I'm not quite sure. I have to check. So just before I change it, here's a quick look at the existing hardware for anyone who hasn't seen it. It's just some ADATA 120 gig SSD El Cheapo thing, and this Asus Digital Home P5WDH Deluxe. This is an awful motherboard, by the way. The only reason I kept this thing around, honestly, is because I wanted to destroy it in some fun manner that I never got around to doing. And so when the existing board in here, the AMD board, crapped out, I just shoved this in here because it was all I had. But this board is really weird. It's just like a hodgepodge of random crap that Asus decided to shove together. And the design decisions were not super great. And also the software, I mean, the BIOS on this is also super hacked together. It's just kind of terrible, and there's some definite serious bugs in the BIOS on this thing. So yeah, anyway, I'll be glad to see it go, and I'll be glad to see the power usage drop, because we're sitting about 100 to 110 watts or so idle with all the gear that's here. I mean, I have a cable modem, and I have just the one wireless access point. This one which is, this is still up, by the way. When I did my last network tour, this thing was, I don't know how many 100 days uptime. This is still up. I actually moved, when I moved, I actually took this with me, attached to its UPS, and so this has been up 880 something days now. So I'm hoping to make it to 1,000 days, and there's no security vulnerabilities that are known externally from the firmware version this has. So because this is only a wireless access point and it's only on a private LAN, it's actually okay for it to be unpatched. And this is just a guest thing which is off because I don't have very many guests. So yeah, and that's it. That's all I get for this. And if you're wondering why there's 3 UPSs here, it's because these are daisy chained off of this guy. And I know daisy chained UPSs usually scares most people, but this is a pure sine wave output UPS. So technically, you can daisy chain things off of a pure sine wave UPS. So these two are, of course, these are modified sine wave output. These are, you can't chain these together. So, the mains comes in, goes through this, and then goes from here into both of these. And so this one runs the router and the backup server because this is a 525 watt. And then this one, which is I think it's a 300 watt. This one runs literally just the wireless access points. You can see the guest wireless is unplugged and the modem and stuff. So that way I can kind of split out the runtime. And the reason why I have this is because this was a Cyber Monday sale. It was like 60% off, and this is like a $300 something UPS. And so I wanted to get another one. So that's why it's here, in case you're wondering. So let's get this board out of here. And interesting, my camera's face detection somehow thinks that is a face. Kind of funny. So let's get this out of here and get this new one in. And I got to find the manual for this thing because frickin' MSI, they don't bother to label. There's no silkscreen for these connectors. So I know that there's, the power and power switch, reset switch, and the LEDs and stuff on this connector, but there is no labeling at all. I mean, they had all this room here that they could have put like a little table, but no, I got to get the manual for that. That's the thing that separates companies like like Asus and Gigabyte and stuff from companies like MSI. Is just the little things like that just makes things so much easier to hook stuff up, especially when it's a weird connector that's non-standard where you can't just know the pin out based on the positioning of the pins. Anyway, let's stop rambling. Let's do this. So I just got it installed and just turned it on. I don't have the actual case wiring loom hooked up because it's cable tied all the way at the back there, so I got to take the back panel off, and I just wanted to get this thing up and running and make sure everything worked first before I did that. It looks kind of ridiculous now, doesn't it? I mean, I've got a TFX supply here, kind of bodged in there, and then a little mini ITX board. I'd buy a smaller case for this if they weren't so freaking expensive. I mean, there's just these mid towers are just so cheap compared to the mini ITX cases. I have no reason to change it, but I knew now, due to the fact that this card's so high, the case fan on the side might not be in the right place to blow air on it, because that's what I was using to cool this. Because you really do need some airflow over these cards, because there's just, they get too hot. I've noted them, around 70 degrees or something, which I'm not super okay with. I do have a fan that I put on, like I basically took, I think they were like kebab skewers, and I just basically glued them into the 4 screw holes, and so it sits flat and blows air up. And I had that in the old router before I had to put that graphics card in, and I had to switch to the case fan option. So I might find that fan again if I still have it, and might put that one back in, because it just creates a little bit of an updraft, which makes me at least feel better about the condition of the card. Because of course the data sheet says you just need stupid airflow, which I disagree with, but having at least some airflow is better than none. But anyway, the speaker's not hooked up yet, so I don't know if this thing's done booting, so I'm gonna go check that out. My alarm seems to have stopped. My file server pings this basically every couple seconds, and if it doesn't get a response after so many times, it just starts beeping. Basically, that's my server's response to anything happening bad. It's just beep. So the fact that the beeping stopped tells me this thing's probably reachable again. So I'm just gonna see if everything's working, and if it is, I will tidy this up and show you what it looks like when it's done. So here's how it turned out, and it doesn't look super great, but it's perfectly adequate for my needs. This fan was perfectly fine where it is, so I just left it on. I took this fan and just unplugged it because it wasn't needed. I mean, there's far less heat being produced in this than there was before, so that fan is just kind of redundant. There was a sort of a single loop ferrite that was on the lines, and I had to take that and move it down just because I didn't want it dangling there and hanging on those connectors. So it is still down there in that drive cage, but that's about as stretched as I can really get those. I don't like them dangling over the RAM, but unfortunately those cables aren't long enough, and I don't care enough to extend them all. But that's hooked up, speaker's hooked up, everything looks good. So if I turn off my lamp, and yes, the lamp is technically on a UPS, so I see 45 watts. So assuming that everything is working okay, of course it's going to be load dependent, and also the resolution of the power meter in these UPSs isn't super great. So I'll say somewhere between 45 and 55 watts is what it uses now. So that's about half, which is kind of what I expected, and that's excellent. So yeah, I mean that's all it is. I'm just gonna clean up and put my other server back on here, but I'll probably reboot it now that because I plugged everything in it all live and everything, and it looks like I got the polarity of the LEDs right because they're lit up. So I'll just reboot it once more just to make sure everything's all good, and yeah, I'll keep this until either 2.5 comes out, in which case I'll just replace everything, or I doubt I'll find, maybe I'll buy a used CPU that fits in that because it's a socket 1150. So they don't make those anymore as far as I know. It would have to be a second-hand one. So anyway, whatever. So anyway, hopefully this was entertaining, and as always, thanks for watching.